Hello and welcome to Hobby Vlog number 140. This week has been very much about failing at resin, though failing and learning are very close together, so that's how life goes. But I have had fun doing some other projects and have learned a lot with my resin, and well, you'll see, you just have to watch to find out. But it's also been a beautiful week, mainly in terms of weather, absolutely boiling hot, and so I've been spending a lot of time in the pool and playing with Rosie and a little bit less time hobbying, but that's also what life is about, and that's a great pleasure. So I really hope you enjoyed the video. Please do let me know what you think in the comments below. I do reply to them all. I love reading the comments. They really do inspire me, so don't be shy. Do say hello. And yeah, you will get a reply from me. And thank you for watching again, and I'll see you at the end, and enjoy the video. Right, now for my awesome idea, which I've done once before, which you'll see in a Battle Games Middle-earth video sometime a long time after the vlog comes out. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to make it so that I can have this removable, because what I don't want is to stick this in and then have it maybe get damaged or whatever in storage, and it'll mean I'll be able to store it flat like that and take up less space. And the way that I'm going to do this, I've got my hot wire cutter here, and basically I'm going to very carefully dig out a little kind of, if you're into food, a quenelle, I believe, like so. Okay, and if I tear that upside down, that will now fall out. And what we can do is I can put some glue on the top of that, sit that in there, put that down on top, and then when it's dried, that will lift off, and that will then be able to sit in and not move. So I use the awesome Moment Fix Extreme Power to do this, because it has a good grab and it dries very, very solidly. So we'll put that in there. We'll put a good solid dab of the glue on top, like that. There we are. And then we'll rest this perfectly in position. And I'm doing this now while that paint is drying, because that's not a bad time to do it. And that now will lift out. Oh, drop everything that had piled in it, and you can see there that that is stuck to the bottom of the bit of wood, and will now position itself nicely in there to go back down. So there we are. So there is going to be some little bit of kind of like finessing to be done. I'm going to have draw a line and make sure that I put some masking tape down on the inside of this, so that I don't get any gravel or whatever underneath. And I'm going to have to be a little bit careful with bedding in, because that's one of the risks with this, is you're going to end up with a line. But I'd rather that have a little bit more of a line or something like that, than have it so it's more easily stored. So yeah, there's that. So that's a little trick to if you're looking at positioning a building on top of polystyrene. If you plan ahead, you can very easily take a little kind of scoop out, glue it to the bottom, and it will hold it in place. This build is both for the Encounter 10x10, which hasn't happened for ages, or if it has, I've missed it, and that's why I've got the keys there, because that was the mystery object. And it's also for Paint All the Minis friendly painting competition, the theme of which is nautical. The theme of the 10x10 is absolute destruction or that sort of thing. So I had a couple of ideas, and I've decided to play with resin. So what I've got, this is a awesome kind of like squid. I got this from Creepy Prints ages ago. It's just been sat on my shelf, and I've been wanting to paint it, and I think this is the perfect opportunity. So I'm going to paint that up, and that's going to obviously be the Paint All the Minis. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a box that's 10 centimeters, obviously, on a side, and is open topped, and I'm going to pour resin into it, and then take the box off, and hopefully I'll have a cube of resin with this and some other bits and pieces going on inside. And so yeah, I'm basically pushing the boat out a bit as I do. So yeah, I'm going to make use of this mounting card, which is good solid card, just because it's not going to bow quite as much. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to use sellotape, and I'm going to line the insides with sellotape and also the outside, so that hopefully it doesn't leak or stretch or anything like that, and that will keep the resin in and keep the structure solid. So the first thing for me to do is to get my ruler and mark 10 centimeters and 10 centimeters, cut that very carefully with a sharp knife, and then what I'll probably do is do the outsides. I might even try to make the shape of a box, so it will have a 10 centimeter square. So this will be 20, which will include the bottom that can fold up, and so I might try and get clever. So what I'm going to do is going to get my pencil, do some drawing, and I'll bring you along when I'm about to do the cutting and show you what my plan is. It might work, it might not. You just got to give it a go, haven't you? Can't really see from that angle, but I've drawn that on. I started off on the other side doing a 10 by 10 by 10 and change it to a 10 by 10 by 15 just to make it a little bit taller and more fun, and obviously also to make it more difficult because now it's going to have a little bit more of a pressure at the top. I might have to do a double pour. I do it in 2 stages, but that's not the worst thing in the world. I am very used to pouring resin now with that lake build of mine. So what I'm going to do is use the sharp knife and the safety ruler. I'll say it again, as I say all the time, this is your best purchase you can ever get. Keep your fingers from getting chopped off, and also they are really nice rulers, they're very accurate. So yeah, so we're just going to cut this with a sharp knife, then score gently down the lines. I'm actually doing this the wrong way. I should have the ruler on the side I want to keep, because if I slip now I will damage the other side, but because I'm filming this was easier, but normally I would do it the other way around. So I'll get this cut out and then bring it back when I'm about to start scoring, and then I think probably I will be pretty much straight away into wrapping it up and looking to see about what I'm going to have inside the resin, not just the monster. So I'll get that done, bring it back when I'm coming to do the scoring. The monster, I'm going to go away and I'm going to prime now, and then I will show you how I do the painting. I don't think it's going to be very difficult to paint. It's an amazing print, I really like it. So I'll bring you along for that as well. But first of all, get this cut out, scored, and then we'll start to plan what we're going to have floating. Right, let's get to scoring. So I have a tool here, which is what I'm going to use. It's actually a tool for working with clay. But just so I don't accidentally cut all the way through when I'm using a knife, getting one of these sharp clay tools is a good idea for when you're doing scoring. So what we'll do is we'll make use of the ruler again. We'll score right down the drawn line like that, and then that should bend. There we are, very nicely. And you can see that I've already done one. So what I'm going to do now is go around and do the rest of them, and then I'll bring it back when I've finished, and I will probably do a temporary fix with some masking tape just to hold it in place so I can plan how I'm going to actually do the pour. And then yeah, it should be relatively quick once I've painted the model. I think that's going to be the thing that's going to take a little bit of time. But yeah, hopefully this will work quite nicely. Let's get this scored up, bent and taped in place with some masking tape, and I'll bring it back and show you what it looks like. Well, this has been washed and is now dried, and what I'm going to do now is look for any little bits of sprue that need to be cleaned up. As you can see, there's a little bit there, just from this bit of hair down to that bit of hair. Now most of these I'm going to be able to do just very carefully with a sharp knife, but even better with the snips, and then take the last little bit off with a knife. So I'm going to do that now. I'm going to stick a YouTube video on and watch that while I work on these and clean up all the pieces before I'm then going to start to stick together into my assembly parts. But take your time on this, there's no need to rush, because the better job you do while you're cleaning up your model, the less things you'll have to hide with your paint job. So just take your time, take all the little bits off like that, and then you end up with a nice clean part. So there's a few bits on each, not lots, but just enough, which does need to be tidy. There's actually a tiny little bit on this bit of hair and a little bit of flash as well. So I'm going to get that done, and when I come to the next step I will turn the camera back on. So there was quite a bit more clean up than I expected, to be quite brutally honest, but so I've got hiccups as well, which is going to be annoying, but I've managed to get these cleaned up, and what I'm going to do now is start to glue them together. Now I'm hoping that there's not going to be too much filling needed, because my filling game is not that strong and it would be quite obvious. But what I'm going to do, just going to use some super glue, put a load in, and the good thing with this is it normally grabs quite quickly, so just hold it in place with the least gap possible, and hopefully that will go off quite quickly. So I'll get all these assembled. It's pretty obvious. I've still got to go through and clean up the skeletons. I've not started looking at those yet, but I'm going to do these main two first, get them done, get them primed and start painting them, and then I'll probably go and clean up and assemble the skeletons after I'm happy with that. So that is now set, so we can continue on this. You can see on here where I've had to do quite a lot of clean up on this, which is, as I said, it was a bit more than I was expecting. I was a bit disappointed, to be honest, and that therefore doesn't marry quite as well. There's a bit of a gap there which is going to need to be filled, but I should be able to do that with some of my Mr. Gap filler, whatever it is, the white stuff, hopefully. So yeah, not the greatest of, a bit far less clean than I was expecting, to be honest. But anyway, yeah, so this won't take me long, but I won't run the camera for the whole of it. We'll get these all assembled, and they will then be able to go to the painting bench, and I'll bring you back when I've got them all assembled, and show what they look like, and then we'll get them primed. Right then, so the black has, the sand has dried on. So what I'm now going to do is I'm going to come along and undercoat in black, which will then mean I can pick the colours out that I want and get the effect that I want. I was very tempted to leave the stones red, and I may indeed come back with some red colour for the stones, but really what I need to do, and what this is doing, is sealing the sand in. Now, to prevent too much warping, I'm going to do this in very small sections, let it dry, another section, let it dry, because this MDF does love to warp. I'm not a big fan of using it, but I've got a whole load of it, so I may as well try and use it up. That's why I've got a whole load of it, because I don't use it very often. So yeah, I'm just going to come along, do little sections, leave it to dry, and then that will seal the sand, give me a nice base that I can then paint up into the colours I want. So I've done my best, but there's a little bit of warp in this, but it is what it is. It's not as bad as it would have been if I'd have gone crazy and tried to cut corners. Next step is actually a little bit more gravel, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to come along, put a bead of neat PVA, because there's a few areas here where the model isn't actually sticking right down. I just need to fill those gaps in, both visually and also structurally. So I'm going to come along with some neat PVA like this, dab it in around the base. It will mean that I'm going to have to do some more black paint, but that's okay, it's not too much. And I'll actually also take advantage and just put some extra texture out and about around here. And what I've got is I've got my, what I call my number 3 gravel, which is the gravel that won't go through the third largest sieve. So it's not the largest gravel I have, but it's a really good size for this kind of thing. And what I'll do is I'll slap that on, and then when it's dried on a bit, I will come along with some more PVA, but watered down PVA this time, just to seal it in place, and then we'll apply the paint. So that will act as both as a visual kind of gap blocker, and also will grout in a little bit more and seal the whole building down. And whether I paint it or not, I'm not sure, because I actually quite like how that how that kind of works. What I can probably do is come along and dry brush brown and greys and maybe just bring that out. So I might do that. Anyway, so I'm going to finish off doing that work. There's some more to do on the inside, some more piles of gravel and what have you and texture. So I'll just use the same technique, and when it's dry I'll seal it down with some watered down PVA. So yeah, little by little. Well then, finally managed to pick myself up a big trough so I can mix from the huge container for the resin. Yes. So I'm not going to do this on camera, certainly not the first time, because I want to get it right. But I'm going to start to do some more resin pours onto the lake. Woohoo! Right, so it's time to look at filling these gaps, and I'm going to make use of the Mr. Dissolved putty here, which is absolutely brilliant, and I find it best to apply with a toothpick. That's how I've found it best to get these kind of gaps, and you can see that there's quite a big gap at the bottom of his torso, which I'm quite disappointed about, to be honest, that it wasn't it went together that badly to leave that much of a gap. But what I'm going to do is going to bring the filler in and push it around using the toothpick to get it into the gaps. If you've got a really old brush that you don't mind ruining, you can use an old brush as well, but I don't have one, and as I say, I've found that the toothpick gives a good result because it pushes it around. Now it might be that we need to do 2 applications of this. Don't try and hero it and do it all in one go. Just take your time, apply some, let it go off. It doesn't take long to go off, and then if you need to put some more in, you can put some more in. So I'm going to do this. I'm going to stick a bit of a YouTube video on, one that I will more likely listen to than look at, because this does take some concentration. And I'll bring you back when I've finished doing the filling, and then we'll probably be ready for priming these, and then start to assemble the other bits. So I'm going to get that done. I'll bring you back when I've finished. So I've already shown you one way of doing cliff faces on this. I'm going to use a different technique for the lower section. You can see here I've got a big box full of bark. Now this is stuff that I save. We heat our building with wood burning, and so I salvage bark that looks likely, dry it over quite a long time, and then when I want to use it I can pull it out of the box and glue it in place. And then what I'm going to do, it's not my own idea, lots and lots of people do this, but it is probably one of my favourite ways of doing cliff faces, is using bark. So what we're going to do is apply a load of glue and stick it on, and there you are. I mean, what could be easier? You've got a cliff face. Oh, another thing I wanted to show you was I added another little divot because the first one came out shallow, so I've got 2, and that's now really, really secure. So I'm going to move that out of the way now. So I'm going to sit here for a little bit, pick through my box of goodies. I have a lot of bark in here at the moment, and find things like this. That's a really cool shape, and the odds are that I'll be able to stick that on there, so I can break that little bit off, put some glue, stick that on there, and that will be a really nice extra bit for the cliff. So yes, I'm just going to get this done. I will probably not record all of it because it's going to be very, very samey. You've just seen basically what I do. Pick a bit out, offer it up, see whether it works. If it does, glue it in, move on. And when I've finished and all this is dry, then the next step is modelling compound to fill in the gaps. So I will bring you along for that when we reach that step. Alright, so I have finished painting up my monster, as you can see. I'm really pleased with how that's turned out, with nice red blotches. That took some time last night. And what I'm starting to play around with is how I'm going to suspend this in the resin when I start to pour the resin. So that's why I've got some string wrapped around it, but I've not finished doing that yet, so I'll come to that when I've completed it. And what I've got here is my box, which is nicely assembled. So, well, temporarily assembled, nicely temporarily assembled. So what I'm going to do is, the first thing I'm going to do is take those temporary assembly sticky bits off, and I've got sellotape, and I'm going to run sellotape all the way around the inside and cover the entirety of the inside of this cardboard with tape, if the tape will work, that is. So this is to make sure that the resin does not stick to the card, and I've already made a mistake. I need to make sure that I don't have any folds at all, which is beyond my usual level of accuracy. So this could take a little bit of time, so I won't film it all, but that's basically what I'm going to do. Run the tape along and try not to fold it, make it as smooth as possible, and that will mean that when I pour the resin, it doesn't actually stick to the plastic, doesn't stick to the sellotape, and I've got to peel my mould off nicely, hopefully. I might also spray it with some oil, I'm not sure, but I need to make sure it doesn't stick. But if I can get this done absolutely shiny, then that should be okay. Once I've finished doing this, then I'll fold it back up again, and I will put some sellotape to hold the pieces together, and then we'll get on to the pouring of the resin. So yeah, I'll just keep this going. I'll bring it back when I come to actually assembling the box, so you can see what it looks like, and how it goes together. But yeah, let's just put some sellotape on this thing. Well, that's done about as well as I'm going to get it. Pretty happy with that. So what I'm going to do now is come along with the tape again, and I'm going to start to tape the bottom inside together. So what I mean by that is, I'm going to try and do this on camera. It may or it may not work. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work, and I'll try something different. But my idea is to put a run of sellotape as smooth as possible again along the bottom. So try not to put any seams. This may, as I say, or it may not work. So we'll cut that. Need to make sure I cut that nice and accurately. It's actually quite hard doing this while trying to stay in shot, as is always the fun part of doing this on video. And then what I'll do is I'll fold that up and then start, hopefully, to fold this round and get it sealed. Now I'm not only going to seal on the inside, I am also, this is proving to be difficult, I'm also going to seal the outside. Now of course I'm going to need to cut so actually let's put that cut in as well before I do. So I need to cut the corners, otherwise it won't fold. This is being a little bit fiddly, but actually so far so good. There we are. And then the last one, hopefully this is going on camera, I'm not looking at my monitor. Hopefully you can see what I'm doing, but so far so good. The last one of course is the hardest. There we are. And there we are. We have a sealed box. That probably was terribly shot, but at least you can see how I did it. What I'm now going to do is run sellotape up that inside corner, and then I will tape all the outside as well, but I'll do that off camera because that's going to be easier. That was the hard part, but that is our box. Next thing to do, I've noticed while I've been playing with this that I've actually got a little bit of damage on the paint job which I need to fix here, so I'll get that done. That won't take long, paint that in a minute. and then I will start to plan the actual resin pour, which I think is going to be done in 2 or 3 goes. What I'm planning to do is suspend this in here and get a pour in just to hold it, so maybe an inch or 2, because this is going to be quite close to the bottom. And then I'm going to start to sculpt some little ships and boats, which is what this is. So the scale is going to be played with on this. This obviously looks like a normal one, but it's actually humongous, which is why it fits into my little theme, and it's also going to be quite a lot of fun. So I'm going to do a few boats and what have you, and have some of them going down through the water, so they've already been sunk, and have some still on the surface. So yeah, let's have a play around. I will bring you back when I come to do the first resin pour, and we'll have a look and see how we're actually going to do those boats, because I still don't know how I'm going to do that either. Right, so I've been having some fun with this, getting the suspension right for the octopus, and I'm nearly ready for it. So I've got it balanced and dangling now from a clip, which, as you can see, holds it at a nice angle. What I now need to do is make sure it's at the right height when this is settling in, so that needs to wind up a little more than it is. There we are. And what I'm going to do now, I was hoping to avoid doing this, but I'm going to have to, a little bit of super glue on that there. And when that goes off, that will now hold it nicely. The rotation should be resolved by the fact that with this now as high as that, the clip is actually just about touching the this kind of like skewer. And then what I'll do is I will clamp this in place here and here, and then I can pour the resin. So there we are. So all I need to do now is wait for that super glue to go off, and then I'll mix some resin and pour the resin. So when I get to that, I'll bring you along, but this is moving along nicely. Alright, so the moment of truth. Let's start doing this resin pour. So I've got this from CFS, water clear epoxy, which I really like. And what I'm going to do is a 50-50 by volume. So we're going to put about 50%, 50%, and I'll do multiple pours, just because I've got a very small receptacle to mix it in. But it's quite forgiving to work with, really. So yeah, we'll get this mixed up, poured in. Not sure how many pours I'm going to do, but I need to make it so that I can take that clip off the top of the octopus and get it and leave it to, once it's cured, so that it will be nicely secured and held in place. My stick is only just long enough. That was lucky that it was long enough. But yeah, so you get a nice little mix. Swirl it all together, make sure your hardener is mixed up with the part A, and yeah, then we'll pour it in carefully, see where that gets to. I've put it inside, as you can see, I've put this inside a container in case there's a leak, because what you don't want to do is have this pour all over the floor, all over your workbench. But it's going to be quite nice high pour, just because of how deep the box is, so we shouldn't get any bubbles, because obviously I'm not really going to be able to get in there and diffuse any bubbles because it's so deep. So there we are, that's the first pour. I'm going to need a fair amount more than that. Might be that I do this in, do a pour, leave it to cure for a couple of hours, and then do another one. Or it might be that I get a bigger container. So I do have some bigger containers than this, and then I can mix more together at once. Right, I will let you know how long that takes and how many it takes, but we're just going to repeat that process over and over until we have enough resin to support the model, and I can take the clip off, and yeah, let's see how it goes. So this is dried on nice and solidly. What I'm now going to do is start the modelling compound process. So I've I've actually got quite a lot of modelling compound I want to put on this. So I don't just want to fill in these gaps, which is what I'm going to do now, but eventually I'm going to have these awesome bits of quartz that I've picked up from my land, and I'm going to have these scattered around and make the land a little bit kind of like lumpy with outcroppings coming out of it. But the first thing I'm going to do is going to fill in all of these gaps here with my modelling compound before I start to work on the top. So regulars will know I'm not very scientific with how I make this. I know that he does say mix at a certain proportion, but I like to mix to a consistency, and I just do it by feel. You'll get to know pretty easily, pretty quickly, how much water to put in, and if you're not sure, start with slightly less compound, because you can't take water out. So if you put too much water in and you've already got too much compound, you're just going to end up with waste, and waste is bad. However, I seem to have accidentally nailed that. That's exactly the quantity and the consistency that I like. Well, consistency. So what I'm going to do now is come along and fill in these gaps, like I say. So where on the top you've got a gap behind the bark, we're just going to come along with some modelling compound and blend that in and make it so that it doesn't look odd. So it looks a little bit more natural. So I'll get that done, and then when I come to do the next bit of modelling compound, which is on the top, I'll turn the camera back on and show you how I plan on doing that. But yeah, this is for me the fun bit. Finishing off like this is awesome. I love it. I love the results you get. That went really well. After I turned the camera off, I turned the piece over and did the underneath. So that's now all got the modelling compound around the cliffs, and it's tied it all in. It looks really, really nice, as you can see. Now the difference between the two I'm happy with. I'm doing that as a style, for style purposes, but I think normally I wouldn't, and I would have it all one or the other, but I just wanted to mix it up on this one, so there we are. Next thing to do is the crystals. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to work out roughly where these are going to go, and then I'm going to come along with some glue, stick them in place, and then come along with some modelling compound and fill in some lumps and bumps, and I might put some on top of the modelling compound and glue it in, but I'm just going to make it so that there's a couple of these sticking out. I particularly like this one, which I found today, which I need to clean. It's a bit dirty, but that's got a lovely kind of look to it, and I was thinking about having that one quite prominently, maybe even around here, so it's like this is a stone we found at this mine. This is why this town is called Crystalline, so something like that. Then have a couple of the smaller ones kind of scattered around, poking out the ground like that, to look quite nice and cool like that. So yeah, so I'm going to get the glue, going to stick these in, and get the modelling compound and build the rest up. I won't run the camera because it's going to be basically what you've just seen, using the modelling compound to build a few lumps and bumps, and then I'll bring you back when I come to the next step. Well, I'm just about to start this, and I remembered there is something else I need to do before I work on anything else, and that is come along and draw around the base like so, and then mask the inside. And what this will do is it will mean that I can modelling compound up to this line, but not across it, like so, and then I'll be able to set the actual mine head in place without worrying about it being over the top of other terrain. So I'm just going to grab some masking tape. That was more difficult than I needed it to be, but never mind. So yeah, so what we'll do is we'll run the masking tape down the inside of the line, and then I can do my modelling compound right up to the line, sorry, right up to the masking tape, and I'll know that that will be fine for the building. So there we are. So let's get that done, and then I'm going to start to, I think actually I am going to modelling compound and press these in so it's not totally flat. So I don't feel like it would be totally flat. I think that would be quite a unnatural thing for around a mining head. And I'll come along and cut these properly where they're hanging over with a knife in a second, just so they've got a sharp edge. But there we are. Now I can modelling compound the top and down here without worrying about getting in the way of the building. And this is now dried, left it overnight. And as you can see, my little rocks have their little feet, little places to sit. So what I'm going to do now is come along with black paint and sand and paint over everything, but I don't want to have the rocks in the place. So I'm going to highlight where they go, put them to one side, and then once I've finished doing this stage, then I'll be able to put them back in. Now the reason why I'm doing this is, as I say, I don't want to accidentally lose the divots, so some of the divots are quite clear like this one. So it just makes sense just to come along and kind of put a little bit of ink into the holes. So I don't really want to have sand going into there, so I'll avoid those areas. And now I've just mixed up some more of my terrain paint, which is about 50-50 glue and paint with water and a little bit of dish soap or washing up liquid in it to prevent it from going off, getting mouldy. And what we'll do, and when you're painting on top of modelling compound, you need to work in smaller areas because it does dry quick. So what we'll do is come along, put a little bit of paint on, and then scatter some sand on, and then empty that sand off. So I will do this process over the whole thing. I will also be painting the bark black, though I will not put any sand on the bark. Take some time. I'll just take my time doing this, and then when it's finished I'll bring it back and show you what it looks like. So I've done all of around where the building's going to go, and I'm pausing briefly now because what I want to do is take the masking tape off before the sand and paint mix dries, otherwise this will be an incredibly difficult thing to do because it will dry and all combine, and then you'll end up with tearing off chunks of your terrain, which you don't want to do. Already I am a little bit, there's a little bit of a damage there, but that's okay. I will end up painting all of this black as well. Once the sand is dried, I'll come along and I'll coat the entire thing in black, and that will include underneath where the house is, where the building's going. But yeah, just peel that off, and now we have a nice area where the building can sit, and it'll be nicely bedded in with the rest of the terrain. So yeah, that's worked really, really well. As I say, don't worry about little damages because we are going to come along with some black paint afterwards. So yeah, so I'm going to carry on now, do the rest of the build with the black and the sand. I'll bring you back when I get to the next step, but I did think I'd just point that out. Make sure that this does dry very hard, and pulling off masking tape when it's dry is quite difficult. Well, I thought my pour went quite well, but then yesterday I came in and I found that there was quite a lot of resin leaked onto the floor, and you can see along the edge just how much, that's quite a lot I lost. Now, not that much resin ended up on the floor. However, what I am wondering is if the resin is going in and eating away at the white foam which is underneath here. And like the only place I can think that it could be doing that, other than a place which I just can't do anything about and I'm just going to put up with and hope that this pour has sealed that hole, is along here. Now you can see here I've got this lovely flaky bark which looks great, but I don't know whether it's actually. I did try and seal it, or at least I think I did try and seal it. But I'm wondering if some resin. Need to be careful. I have to wipe that off of the top of the resin, the PVA. I'm wondering if some resin is leaking down inside gaps in here, and that is causing the problem. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come along with some watered down PVA, and I might do this several times before I do another pour, because I really don't want to have all the resin disappearing into the guts of the build, because then I have to buy more, and it will work way like twice as much as it should, and it already is a dramatically heavy item. So I'm just going to come along here, try and seal this again. Hopefully this will prevent any issues in the future, and when I do the next pour I'll find out whether it has or not, because either I will have lots of resin on the floor again, and I will also end up with a tide mark around the side of the build, or I won't. So there we are. Like I say, I'll probably come along and do this a couple of times. I'll get a dry brush and take the paint, the glue that's gone onto the top of the resin there. It probably doesn't really matter. A lot of people try to make their resin completely clear, but water isn't. Water does have some impurities and different levels of refraction as you go into different types of whatever's actually dissolved in it or whatever. So I'm not too worried about having a little bit of an imperfection there around this area, but that's a bit too much. Anyway, enough rambling. I think that's what I want to do. I'll go around the rest of the build as well and see if I can spot anything, and if I can then I'll seal it with the PVA. Like there's a bit there that might need sealed. I'll go around the rest of the build, but I think that's where I'm presuming it is, because it's dropped quite a lot, and I definitely didn't get that much resin on the floor. I was able to scrape most of it up. This is going to have my model railway over it eventually, so I don't really mind there being resin under there. I'd rather the resin was on the build than on the floor. So when I come back for the next pour, I'll let you know how it goes. But not everything is always smooth sailing, is it? Especially when you're dealing with resin. If you'd asked me if I could carve a boat from balsa, I'd have said no. Now I know I can, but I will cut myself. However, I'm actually going to leave that on there because this is a violent encounter, and it looks like blood. I did accidentally cut the prow off, but that's fine because this one is going to be a boat, which is, if I just shift the camera slightly, there we are, it's going to be going down in there. Now, a couple of issues here. It's a bit yellowed. I'm not sure if that's because the resin was a bit old. This is an older resin thing, or some other reason, but it's a little bit frustrating. But I suppose that you don't always get white clear seas, do you? So that's actually fine. What I'm going to do, I'm not going to be able to do it on camera because I'm going to have to get right in the way. What I'm going to do, I'm going to put this resin, this in here, and put some super glue on the end. And using tweezers, I'm going to drop it down onto the top of that tentacle right there. Or I might even, and I might do another one or two of these little boats and have another one kind of like caught up in, oh you can't see, sorry, in this tentacle here. So there's going to be 2 or 3 boats going down, and also some of this kind of like some of the carvings that I've done, I'll pop those in, and I'm going to do several very small pours now, not the big pour like I did to get it to this stage so that the octopus was solid, and I will build up detritus as I get nearer to the top, and I want to have the resin going to about near his head. Sorry, you couldn't see where I was pointing there because the camera dropped. So I'm going to have the resin going to about near his head. So I'll get that done. I'll show you what it looks like when I'm pouring the resin. I'll put the camera up and you can see. But yeah, just going to do a little bit more of this, and just to quickly show you how I was doing it actually, because that might be interesting. To get this carved bit out the centre, all I'm doing is basically not using that knife because it's too blunt, but basically carving like this. So not trying to carve anything at any one time, but literally just scratching the surface. And you can see that you can carve out a nice little canoe shape or boat shape or whatever. It doesn't need to be too detailed. This is the first time I've done something like this, so I'm pretty pleased. So yeah, I might make a few more of those and as I say, do a very, very small pour so that when it sets off, the piece stays put. Put something else on, little pour, that stays put. This resin dries very, very quickly, goes off very, very quickly, so should be able to do this quite fast. So yeah, let's get cracking. I've filled the gaps on these, and as you can see, also stuck them to some tongue depressors. Next thing to do is to prime. I use Vallejo surface primer, and I apply it with a brush. So I'm going to do that now. I will actually film again in a minute when I've finished, show what they look like. I don't often show the prime stage, but I figure that could be a bit of interest to someone. So yeah, I'll just get these primed and then bring it back, and then I'm going to start painting them. I've also offered them up onto the base. I'm not 100% sure how the skeletons go on the base. So what I might end up doing is painting the skeletons as they are, mostly, and then assembling them and then touching them up once on the base, because I'm not totally sure that I want to put them together, make a mistake, and then them not actually fit in place. So yeah, bit of a complex one that. There's no real instructions in this either, so I'm going off the artwork. Right then, I've finished doing all of the sand work on this now. So now for the next step, as I say, and I might use a bigger brush than this actually, for the next step, I'm going to come along and I'm going to paint the whole thing black. Now I have noticed that I've made a bit of a mistake on this corner when I set the building in place. There's a little bit of a hole there. I'm going to cover that up with some judicious placement of tufts. I've been thinking about multiple ways of solving it, and I think that's the best way. So anyway, yeah, cover the whole thing with my black terrain paint, which is 50/50 PVA paint. Really nice. Gives a good solid covering. And then yeah, we'll get on to the next step. So I'll get this done, most of it off camera, because yeah, all I'm doing is this. I'm going to paint all the sides, I'm going to paint all the rocks down the front as well, put everything with the black undercoat, and then we'll start working on the colours and making things more, making it more interesting. So yeah, cracking on with this. Not made quite as much progress as I hoped in the time I've spent on it. I've had other things going on, but still I'm cracking on, and it'll be done soon enough. I do like how this technique works. It does a very, very nice result. The main purpose for doing this, by the way, is to seal in the sand. If you want to do it with watered down PVA, that also works. If you don't want to apply black, or you could just make paint of any colour. For a long time I've done this with brown as well. So yeah, but what you're looking at doing is basically sealing and hardening the whole thing off. Anyway, there we are. I will turn the camera off now and carry on. Looks like I might need to mix some more of this up, and I'll bring you back for the next step when I get to it. So for another project I'm doing, I mixed a little too much resin. As it happens, this is actually the last of the resin, so I just put all of it in, and it's ended up being a little bit more than I needed. So what I'm going to try and do is just put a little pour of resin down here and just see what happens. Just see if that will seal or cause problems. See if anything seeps. And if anything does seep in, hopefully it will go off, and this problem will go away from this area. So that's my plan. So that's what I'm doing, as you can see. I'm frustrated that I haven't been able to pour for the last couple of days because of this. So trying to get this in all the little nooks and crannies and gaps that could eventually cause a problem. Having said that, I'm going above where my water line wants to be there, but hey, I'll do it anyway. So yeah, let's see how that works. Hopefully that will seep in and lock or hold anything that's going to leak. Can't see anywhere else where it could be causing a problem. That's the only place I'm aware of. So yeah, I'll be putting some paper down underneath, see if it leaks. So this is how much I prime. My normal technique is to use quite a lot of resin, quite a lot of resin. Sorry, I've got resin on the mind because I just shot something about resin. Quite a lot of primer and spread it around. So start with quite a lot on and then move it around to make sure I get a good coverage. Rather than trying to start too thin, what I've found doing that is often it just stays too thin. But if you put a good amount on and then move it around, you can get a good coverage with this primer. And I'm quite pleased with that. So they will be ready to start painting. I will try to do relatively regular updates and explain how I'm doing it. I'm not a painting expert and I don't get much joy from filming painting because I struggle quite a lot to keep in shot. But I will try to at least show and explain what I'm trying to do so that if any of that is a useful tip, then you can listen. But yeah, I'm not a great painter, so fingers crossed I'll do okay on this. All right then, finished the pour. Which went well enough. This was very old resin and I'm thinking that the yellowness has come from that, and also it hasn't cured 100% right. So this is really the moment of truth because yeah, it's a little bit funny. I'm not sure how well this is going to actually come out of its what's it. And I might end up having to do quite a lot of, as you can see, there's the last pour hasn't really cured right. So yeah, it's going to be a case of trying to peel this off as best as I can. I'm not going to be able to save the mould, so I'm just going to rip it off like this. There we are. And hopefully what we get out will actually work right. God dear, that's actually quite hard work, but not too terrible. Easier than I feared for that stage. And that looks quite cool, doesn't it? Right, it's a bit difficult me doing this while staying in shot, so I'm going to continue pulling this off. Won't take very long. It is coming off there. I just tore it a bit, so I'll get that all unpacked. It's a shame it's so yellow, but I think it's going to be okay. My first attempt at doing something like this, probably learned a lot, and we'll do different next time. So yes, I'll get the rest of it off. We'll have a look at it, and then we'll look at the finishing touches to complete this diorama. We'll never let it be said that I only show the good. This is the bad. This might end up just getting binned. It's badly cured. It's yellow. It's way too deep. Completely miscalculated how deep I was suspending it. This was supposed to be about a centimetre from the top bottom. Not sure how that happened, whether resin got down and lifted, I'm not totally sure at all. Also, I've got bits of impressions of sellotape, and finally on the back corner, yeah, I can't actually get that off. So I'm going to finish it anyway because I don't give up, but I'm not sure whether I'll keep it. It might just get binned. The only shame is that that was actually a purchased model, not a printed one myself. What I've learned so far, and the good things, is I've become a little bit more confident in terms of carving into the wood carving, so that's obviously wood, and I've learned not to be an idiot with resin. It makes me a little bit nervous about what will happen when I open up my my lake build, but I'm not going to worry about that. That's £1,000 worth of resin. This is about a £5, so a bit of a different scale. But I will finish it. I'm going to put some splashes and finish off the top. It's not far off done anyway, so I may as well. But yeah, I'm not very happy, and yeah, it's not really isn't as good as I expected. I might actually end up, I'll probably enter this for the Encounter Terrain build, but I might end up doing something entirely different for Paint All the Minis, but we shall see. And so shall you, because that will be on the channel when I get to it. Alright, so it's the next day. Well, I don't think I've quite gotten over my disappointment how badly this has gone. I'm still going to finish it, and I'm going to crack on, because that's just what you do. So what I've got here is a little jar with a load of 99% alcohol, and what I've got here is some transparent silicone. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to build up a load of splash and drips and what have you all over the top of this. So you put a little bit on, and then you take a toothpick dipped in alcohol, and that is by far the best way I've found to manipulate this resin, because it kind of slightly deconstitutes it, if that's the correct word, but not so much that it disappears, and it doesn't stick to your stick. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to build this up in stages, and then I'll put some white on it for froth and what have you. This is going to be far from the result I expected, because unfortunately the underlying has a bit of green in it. And they don't sell slightly murky green silicone sealant, so there might be a little bit of a colour mismatch, but I'm now putting this down to experience and learning. I'm going to practice with it and at least get something out of it. But what I also want to have is one more carved boat that I'm going to put shooting off in one direction, trying to get away basically. So, and I think it's going to be here. So I will build up my splash and wave action on this side, as you can see, going away from where the monster is emerging. I've sat this on top of this bit of XPS so that the uncured resin doesn't cause me a problem with any dust and sand that might be on my workbench, because there's a lot. So yeah, I'm just going to get this done, and then when this is dry, I'll come along with some white paint and dry brush the wave tops. But this is a great way of getting some nice 3D on the top of particularly for if you're looking for quite big waves. If you're not looking for such big waves, then medium is a good way of doing it as well, which I also have. I've got gloss medium, but I want bigger waves than gloss medium is going to give me. So I'll work through that just in exactly the same way, and I'll bring it back when I've finished doing the waves, and I'll carve out another boat as well and get that put on there. But yeah, so slightly deflated because of how badly it's gone in terms of the resin pour, but we can't win them all, and this is what happens sometimes when you make mistakes. Must have just got the mix wrong, and I also do think that it was very old resin, and that's mostly the problem, because the resin is crystal clear normally and yet it's come out yellow. So I think this is quite old resin, and that probably is my mistake, was just making use of old resin. So yeah, live and learn, but let's see if we can get something out of it at the end of the day. Well, finally this week, very much later than expected, my second wave of Solomon Kane arrived. So let's make a load of noise, taking the packing off. And I've got it back to front, but never mind. So let's have a look. Oh, we have Solomon Kane, the Heart of Africa. And inside this, we've got some cool miniatures. We've got more tiles for the game, more cards, a couple of storybooks. Now, I really do need to actually play this game, because all I've done is sleeved the Wave 1 and then not even looked at it since then, and that was last summer. So yeah, we've got Against the Vampires. Now that artwork I have as my backdrop on my computer. And this was one I was particularly looking forward to getting. So yeah, so we've got 27 more miniatures, more tiles and cards and what have you. I'll do an unboxing probably at some other time, but I'm just pleased that this has finally arrived. It got delayed quite a lot for some reason, but I was helped out by one of their support guys, Castle of the Devil. Got 3 minis, including one particularly horrific looking one. Look at that, that's awesome. So yeah, four tiles. So these are all expansions. You need the base game to play these, so there's no point in getting these if you don't have the base game, but I do obviously have the base game. And last but not least, we have the New World, which is another one with some awesome miniatures in it, including a Wendigo, I believe, which is pretty cool. So yeah, that's good. There does seem to be some other stuff in the box. There is an envelope. Now, let's see what's inside the envelope. This is exciting. What's inside the envelope is What Lies Beyond. An errata pack and some errata cards. So I'm going to have to go through and adjust my sleeving, it seems. So anyway, I'm really pleased that finally arrived. Like I say, it was a bit delayed for whatever reason, but as they say, better late than never. There's nothing else in there, so that's that. So yeah, another thing to go on the shelf and get ignored for years probably, but we shall see. So there we are. As I say, bit of a varied week, bit of a frustrating week in terms of resin, but you live and learn, and if you're not learning, then what are you doing? And also, it is very, very nice to have actually received my Solomon Kane. So thanks for watching, really do appreciate it. Do, as I say, comment below whatever you've got to say. Do say it, I love it, positive or negative. I do reply to everyone, and I really appreciate it if you made it this far into the video. I'll say, as I always do at the moment, if any of you are directly or indirectly impacted by the horrible war in Ukraine, my thoughts go out to you and anyone you know who is. And to everyone, please do stay healthy, stay safe, and stay well.